we're going to transition now. And in some ways, this is the most wonderful way to start the day coming into what we have now, which is time with a very cherished teacher. So I'm just going to say a quick thing, and then we're going to bring her up on stage. If you are already a fan of or have ever been influenced by the teachings of Lynne Twist, I invite you to do two things. One, share anything you'd like in the Zoom chat box. We'll send that to Lynne afterwards. And two, feel free to unmute and say anything you would like to help me to bring Lynne up to the stage. Go for it, everybody. You can say anything that you want. Go for it.
I'm waiting for you, Lynn.
Excited to be here.
Looking forward to this.
Lynn.
How are you doing?
Coming.
Welcome.
Can't wait to hear from you.
Exactly what I came
Happy
for.
to have you.
Amazing body of work.
Karishma just put in quotes, Lynn, that which you appreciate appreciates. Stephanie just wrote, the Pachamama Alliance has been a deep inspiration in my journey of learning. Thank you for all you bring to the world. Kit says, I met her in Boise years ago. She was amazing. Well, Lynn, you have an extraordinary story. You've lived an incredible story, and I'm thrilled to invite you to share some of these stories and learnings with us today. So first, I just want to ask, how does this moment find you right now? How are you?
Well, I'm sort of bathing in the beauty of your community. It's so warm and hospitable, so deep and practical, so appreciative, and I feel people in mood and a mode of deep gratefulness and receptivity. So it's like a bath. It's like a warm bath, when you step into a warm bath and you feel embraced by the warm water. It's just lovely to join you on the third day of your beautiful immersion into consciousness and love, camaraderie, community, and transformation. So I couldn't be happier. So thank you for including me.
I appreciate how you describe that. Lynn, as you and I are speaking, I can see everybody on my screen, and I can see how many of you really appreciated Lynn being here for just a few minutes and the articulation of this space. Wow, that's meaningful. And Lynn, you probably just see me really big, but just so you know, I've got everybody right here. So if y'all want to wave to Lynn so she can actually see you, that's
cool.
it. That's at least, that's about 1/6 of the group right there.
I went scrolling through the
rest
gallery.
of them are over here. There you go.
Yeah, I love that. I went through the gallery view when I was watching before you brought me on, and just wonderful to see all your faces and that you're all on camera. I mean, so much of the time in some of these things, people aren't on camera. They're doing 25 emails or cleaning their desk, but I can tell how present you are and that you're really engaged, fully engaged. So it's this beautiful community. Really, congratulations, John and Adair, and your whole team. And what a pleasure to join you today. Thank you.
Lynn, me asking you, how does this moment find you? And then you articulating it in a way that it probably got some people's attention to how you found yourself at this moment. And actually, I'd love to follow that thread. And one of the things that I've appreciated as Adair and I have gotten to know you, we got to work with you recently in co-leading the Conscious Capitalism CEO Summit, where you opened and closed the summit in almost a ceremonial way. It was beautiful. But I've noticed that you have a remarkable way of helping us to make sense of our place in time. I think that's something that your teachers have helped you with. And so, you're aware that we come into this training and we start by saying, look, we're living at a time where our world is changing in ways that maybe we've never faced. And I'd love to invite you to share what's one way that you like to see or make sense of this moment in time that we're in from a historical perspective.
Well, thank you for that beautiful question. Uh, let's see, there's many different ways to answer that. I feel fortunate to be working with Indigenous people as somebody put in the chat, the Pachamama Alliance, and that connection with Indigenous people, particularly the people of the Amazon and the Andes, is a connection with a way of seeing the world that matches a whole series of prophecies, extraordinary prophecies that have been told for millennium about this time in history. And I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that I'm living, you're living, we're living at a time in history that's been prophesied for millennium by many, many, many different traditions. And one of them is the tradition of the prophecy of the eagle and the condor, which has many different interpretations. But one is that's relevant to us, I think, to all of us, is that there's a prophecy of the eagle and the condor, or interpretation of it, that talks about that at this particular time in history, we're moving from a 500-year cycle called a Pachacuti, which was the fourth Pachacuti in the way the Quichuas and the Shiwiar and the Achuar and the Kayapo talk about it. A 500-year cycle that began right around 1492 or 1500. And that Pachacuti, 500 years, was called the Pachacuti for Indigenous people of dominance and darkness, 500 years of oppression and dominance. And that this next Pachacuti is called the fifth Pachacuti, the Pachacuti of balance and light. Sounds a lot better, the next 500 years, particularly for the Indigenous people. But that prophecy also says that the eagle and the condor, eagle referring to those people on the planet, the human beings that see life, perceive life primarily through the mind, condor people. And that refers to people like us. You know, we have incredible tools that extend the capacity of the mind. And the prophecy said that by the year 2000, the eagle people would be at a kind of zenith in their capacity to expand the mind through tools and technologies. The eagle people would be in a place of material wealth beyond any previous generation's imagination. They would be at a zenith in their capacity to create art and music and a refined way of being with mind. However, they would be spiritually impoverished to their peril, and their very survival would be at risk. This prophecy was for the year 2000, many, many centuries ago, about the eagle people, whereas the condor people, which refers primarily to the Indigenous people who perceive life primarily through the wisdom of the heart. And the condor people would be the same kind of zenith, exquisite sophistication in the ways of the heart, the understanding of the spirit world, and their relationship with the community of life and the earth herself. So they would be sophisticated in their zenith, in their ways, their spirit ways, their heart wisdom, their ancient ways, and their understanding of the natural world. But they would be, by the year 2000, materially impoverished to their peril, and their survival would be at risk. And the prophecy says that right around the year 2000, the eagle people and the condor people will reunite or remember that they are each other and begin to fly together in the same skies, and the whole world will begin to come back into balance. And that's the time we're living in right now. The prophecy also says for the first 25 to 50 years of shifting from the Pachacuti of dominance and darkness to the Pachacuti of balance and light, Pachamama, which is their name for Mother Earth, will humble all her creatures with massive climactic events, earthquakes, tsunamis, floods, fires, volcanic eruptions, shifts in huge climactic changes. This has been prophesied for millennium, to humble all her creatures so they will remember their rightful role in relationship with her, going into the Pachacudi of balance and light. So the climate crisis we've been going through, that we're facing with great trepidation, I think, and hopefully with some wisdom, has been prophesied for millennium. And indigenous people also know that is already painful, lots of death and destruction, almost like a cleansing of the entire human family, but all forms of life as we go into the Pachacudi of balance and light. So that's one prophecy. And then I'll just tell my metaphor, if that's okay.
Please do, please.
I feel that COVID, which isn't over, I know that probably some of you have had it recently. I know people who have it now. But the height of COVID, when we were really inside of a pandemic, you could say was morning sickness for a pregnant species. The indigenous people say that COVID, like everything, comes from the mother, and that we were longing in a primordial way as a species to call for something powerful and sacred enough to disrupt the way we were living. We tried to disrupt it ourselves and we couldn't do it. We've become so powerful. But we yearned for something sacred and powerful enough to disrupt the way we're living and give us time to rethink our path, our way of going, so that we can reimagine, reinvent the way we're living in a more reciprocity with the natural world. And so you could say that COVID was morning sickness for a species that didn't know that it was pregnant. When I was pregnant and I had morning sickness, I didn't know I was pregnant and I thought I was sick. But once I found out I was pregnant, it was kind of cool that I was throwing up every morning and feeling nauseous in the afternoon and wanting to sleep all the time and wanting strange foods. Now I had a purpose for that, a vision for that. And so I suggest that we've been in morning sickness and we don't know, and we now can discover that we're pregnant as a species with a new kind of human being, the kind of human being that's on this beautiful 3-day retreat, the kind of human being who lives in sacred reciprocity with the earth and other species and each other, the kind of human being that is ready to create a civilization that's a transformation from the one that we've been living in now. And every pregnancy does not produce a child. It's not guaranteed. But if we know we're pregnant, then we understand the times we're living a little bit better. And pregnancy can be difficult, and there might be a very long, difficult labor. There's this beautiful phrase from my friend Michael Beckwith and Rev D: pain pushes until vision pulls. And if you've ever had a baby, you know that it hurts to have a baby, but the pain pushes. And once you have the vision that you're going to have a baby, you know the more it hurts, the closer you are to having a child. So we might be in pregnancy, we may be in a birth canal, but if we understand the power of giving birth, both men and women, this is a co-labor, a collaboration. We can get through this period if we have a vision clear enough to pull us through the pain. So that's a metaphor and a prophecy about the times we're living in that I find valuable and helpful.
My goodness. What's inspiring about both the metaphor and the way that you share the prophecy is, I think many of us are receiving this as an understanding at the largest scale, and yet simultaneously you're speaking to us as individuals.
Exactly.
And you began to answer kind of where my curiosity was going, which is, for any of us who can feel what you're describing happening on the largest scale, is we're here this week to do the most deep inner work. What else? Is there anything else you'd like to offer to help those of us who want to be of use? We want to be a part of this, as you often say, evolutionary leap.
Mhm.
What offerings come to mind when you think about, well, what can we do to prepare ourselves to be of service, to be of use in the most personal sense?
Well, I actually think the crisis we're in, the climate crisis, the political crisis, the economic crisis, um, the healthcare crisis, we're in a pluri-crisis, a meta-crisis across the board. All the structures and systems that we've relied on are falling apart at the seams. All of them have become dysfunctional. The things we've relied on that have kept stability and certainty in our capacity to see the future are destabilized and falling apart. The biggest, of course, being the climate crisis. And to say another distinction, which was a prediction. So I've talked about a prophecy, I've talked about a metaphor, and now I'll share a prediction. I worked with Buckminster Fuller. I was lucky enough to know him and to be a student of Buckminster Fuller, the great humanitarian engineer, architect who lived in the 20th century. If you don't know who he was, he invented the geodesic dome. He invented an electric car in 1949. He predicted the end of fossil fuels. He was a remarkable human being. I met him when he was in the 80s. He was like a grandpa to me. And I didn't understand most of what he was talking about. He was a brilliant, brilliant man. But I loved him because his love for life, his love for the world, his love for what he called the intellectual integrity of the universe was so glorious that you just wanted to be around that profound love. And even though I didn't follow what he was talking about most of the time, and he said something really profound. Well, he said a million things that were profound, but I'm just saying in 1976, before most of you were born, I went to a talk he did, and he said something really awesome. He said humanity, even in 1976, had passed a critical threshold. And he put his arm out like this, and he said, "We've passed it." And it changes everything. And he said that threshold is this: we now live in a world where there is enough for everyone, everywhere to have a healthy and productive life. We move from a world of scarcity, a you or me paradigm, where, John, you make it at my expense, or I make it at your expense because there's not enough for both of us. Two, on the other side of this line, a you and me world, where you and I can both make it at no one's expense. And that's a very different paradigm. Instead of a paradigm of scarce resources, where there's not enough to go around and someone's always going to be left out, we live in a world where there's enough for everyone, everywhere, to have a healthy and productive life. And he said this is 1976. And he said, and I'm not talking about an amount of anything. I'm talking about a way of being with the world. Then he said, we have sufficient resources, and maybe we've always had them, but now it's blatantly clear that everyone can be cared for. And then he said, our science, our technology is moving in a direction of doing more and more with less and less. That is the direction in 1976 of our genius, of our way of being, of our inventiveness, of our technologies, of our science, of the human family. However, he said, it will take, and he said it in 1976 again, 50 years for us to realize this, because we're so embedded in a mindset of scarcity, and all of our institutions in which we live are enshrined from a mindset of scarcity. Clearly, the economy is rooted in a you or me understanding of the world. Clearly, education at that time, he said, is rooted in a you or me understanding of the world. Our science is rooted in a you or me understanding of the world. Governance rooted in a you or me understanding of the world. He went as far as he could, and then he said the kind of holy grail. He said even religion is rooted in a you or me understanding of the world. And Bucky predicted in 1976, he said, it will take 50 years for these institutions to become so dysfunctional because they're rooted in an inaccurate understanding of the world, they will start falling apart at the seams, and we won't be able to repair them. We won't be able to prop them up any longer or adjust them. We will need to let them dissolve and recreate, reinvent the great institutions of humanity from a new paradigm, a you and me paradigm, a paradigm of profound sufficiency, of reverence for life, a profound understanding of sacred reciprocity with other members of the community of life, an understanding that humans are not supreme, to end human supremacy and transform it into human responsibility and reciprocity, sacred reciprocity with all forms of life. He said that will take about 50 years for the institutions to become so dysfunctional that we can't repair them. And there'll be a meta crisis. If you think about 1976 and 2024, his prediction was right about now. And for Bucky, that was a gift. And if we can see it as a gift, that our institutions are no longer serving us because they're rooted in an inaccurate understanding of the world, a me first, an individuation. You know, Gandhi said, there's always been enough for our need, not for our greed. And so we now are in a place where we're facing that we have to transform the human family. We created the climate crisis. We created these crises, and we can turn them around. But it'll take a transformation in who we are. And that's what Exchange is all about. That's what every company, I'm sure, that's on the screen is all about. I'm sure if you were drawn to this wonderful 3-day retreat, you're someone who's on the path of transforming yourself, your company, your nonprofit, your family, your probably even your faith, in a way that it is of profound service to the long-term stability of life itself. And so I just know because of Adair and John that I'm with people who understand what I'm talking about and are on that path. So the inner work you're doing, the spiritual work you're doing, the deep understanding of triggering and how to move out of different ways of being that are harmful and destructive, and part of being human, yes, but how to navigate ourselves through this passage we're in. You know, the climate crisis, we say, is not happening to us. We're not the victim of it. It's happening for us. It's the biggest, most profound wake-up call the human species has ever had. And why not use it for the greatest transformation we've ever been required to find in ourselves, and use it in your own life to transform who you are and how you relate to the natural world, the spirit of life, the long-term future of life, and being part of now what's called the Anthropocene, which means that human beings are co-responsible for evolution. That's a tall order. And I don't think we know how to do that, except through deep and deep and deep inner guidance, inner work, and really looking at who we are and who we know we need to become.
Well, Lynne, your articulation of who this community is and what this gathering aims to be it's meaningful to hear, and it's very accurate, at least for me. So it's appreciated. And I want to observe a pattern, a theme between both your the prediction that you learned from Bucky, the prophecy you shared, as well as the metaphor. One of the patterns and the themes in each of these teachings is that a part of this evolutionary leap, a part of this transformation, is about understanding that there may need to be a breaking down in order for there to be a breaking through.
Mm-hmm.
You have written quite a bit about your own breakdown and the signals that you realize that it is giving to you. You've also invited us to really look at our relationship with pain and even willingness to be proximate to pain. I believe I heard you say, and you've written chapters about that. Is there anything that you're inspired to share, stories or examples that may help us to think about what does this mean to, in our own individual way, be willing and able to break down so that we can participate in a breakthrough?
Gosh, that's a wonderful topic. I'll just say that I've learned in my own path, and I think everybody can look in your own life and see this. And the beautiful video you played of Danny is an example. Every breakdown has the seeds of a breakthrough that's bigger than the breakdown. Every breakdown, an illness, the loss of a parent, a divorce, a bankruptcy. In every breakdown are the seeds of a breakthrough that's bigger than the breakdown. But we need to know that, look for those seeds, allow the breakdown to break us open, break our heart open. And if we're not looking for the seeds of the breakthrough, we may not get to give it its birth. So I think I know you teach this way. I mean, that's my experience, and everything you've said that I've listened to already today is that there's always, you could say a silver lining, making lemonade out of the lemon. Where's the pony in the pile? There's all those wonderful phrases, and they're kind of funny and kind of trite and kind of cute, but they are actually they lead us to finding real meaning in life. And if we look at our whole path, if you go all the way back to when you were a child, the biggest transformations you probably had some sort of breakdown in the midst of them, some sort of pain that broke your heart open, broke you out of a pattern, forced you to re-see, rethink, relook, respect. The word respect comes from re-look, respectate, re-see. And when we find ourselves in a transformation, we also find ourselves in a new level of respect for the beauty of life, re-seeing the glory, the gorgeousness, the magnificence, the aliveness, the depth of love. Whenever we have a transformation, what's present, at least for me, is love. And so I feel like it's not like I want more breakdowns or I'm trying to get them to happen to me, but I do have that context, and context informs content. And if you don't have a context for the breakdown, it hurts. It doesn't hurt less when you have a context for it, but you know that the pain is temporary. And in my book, where you were referencing, I talk about being proximate to suffering, actually, because I've been lucky enough to work on world hunger for many, many years in my life, and worked very closely with Mother Teresa at the Kalighat, the Home of Deaf and Dying, worked with her in her leprosy center, and being proximate to suffering, not my own, but the suffering of another. Some people can't do that, and I totally respect and understand that. I've been in refugee camps. I was in Mozambique after the war. I was in Ethiopia after the famine. Being proximate to suffering for me, and I don't say this has to be true for everybody, has shown me the profound resilience of the human spirit. I realized through the Hunger Project that I'd been calling people poor, and I would never label a person that way ever again. And I know most of us would call people in situations of war and degradation poor, that they're poor people. But when you get to know them, and I'm sure many of you have, there's nothing poor about them. They're so strong. They're so capable. They have such a strong inner core. they're so innovative, they're so creative, they have to be. I'm thinking about women in Africa that I worked with during famine. They may not be educated, they may not be able to read and write, but that's not a function of intelligence, that's a function of access and opportunity. What's poor is their circumstances, not them. And who they are strong, able, creative, amazing people living in poor circumstances, whole and complete people, sometimes having the qualities that we go to 10 workshops to try and get. And that courage to live life in those circumstances. They need more courage than most of us will need in our lifetime to get through a day. So to call them poor is to demean them and to demean those of us who would call them poor. The same thing with people that I used to call rich. They start thinking they are their circumstances, and they can no longer separate themselves, disaggregate themselves from their trust fund or their stock price. So when we label people by their circumstances, we do them a terrible disservice. But this is just really, I was just saying why being proximate to suffering has been such a service to me, because I've seen the strength, the resilience, the wholeness, the completeness of the human spirit, no matter what the circumstances. And that's been a real gift to me in my work, in the path that I've been given this lifetime.
Lynne, thank you. As you are sharing, I'm able to see some of the real-time comments participants choose to share appreciation in the Zoom chat box, and there's a lot of appreciation. We'll send you that later on, so you can enjoy that if you'd like. Lynne, you spent years as the head of fundraising for the Hunger Project. You've raised hundreds of millions of dollars. You had hundreds of thousands of volunteers. And then you took a kind of a dramatic turn to go dedicate yourself to what has become the Pachamama Alliance. And if anybody hears or reads of your story, they'll notice, and specifically in your most recent book, Living a Committed Life, you have lived a theme or a pattern. And my interpretation is that the answer to that is actually the subtitle, Finding Freedom and Fulfillment in a Purpose Larger Than Yourself. I'd love to invite you to speak to a phrase that I've heard you share. And this is a phrase that I've heard you share that it sticks with me, and I just don't ever want to let it go. And my best recollection is it's like this. When we commit to something greater than ourselves, the universe invites us to become who we need to be to live into that commitment. It's about what we choose to commit to, the size of our purpose. You've modeled that. You've written a book about it. What might you share with us about thinking about our commitments and the purpose that we are wanting to serve, and how that commitment will in turn organize the world for us to become who we need to be?
Well, thank you. I feel like everybody knows this in their heart and soul, but I'll say what's in many ways, I think, key to being in the world right now. When we make a commitment larger than our own life starring us, that commitment, and it's really profound, we really take a stand for something that's larger than our own life starring us. That commitment comes back and reaches into our life and transforms us into who we need to be to fulfill that commitment. I'm lucky enough to know Jane Goodall, and Jane was, kind of a little bit average, really, growing up in high school, and went to the Gombe stream with her mom, and once she made a commitment, she had the huge commitment that she made, which created an incredible career for her, and had her delve into realms and think about things that no one had ever really discovered before, and really be the person who defined interspecies communication and changes the face of science. But it came from a commitment first. Same thing with Mother Teresa. She was a teacher. She was, for most of her life, until she was in her 40s, she was an unremarkable teacher. She became the principal of a kind of fancy girls' school for Indian girls. And it was her commitment to begin her own order and take care of the deaf and dying that turned her into the extraordinary person who won the Nobel Prize. And you know, I'm not saying you have to be Mother Teresa or Jane Goodall, but I just know that when we make a commitment that's extraordinary for us, that's sort of stunning for us. My commitment to end world hunger did this for me. I had to become the person who was worthy of that commitment. And the commitment itself transformed my life. It took me to India and Africa and had me be proximate to suffering, as I've told you. And the commitment to work in the Amazon now, to preserve the sacred headwaters of the Amazon rainforest, which came through a whole series of mystical experiences, which I'd be happy to share, really, really altered everything about who I am. And so there's a wonderful quote from W.H. Murray we've all heard, probably, that once you commit, providence moves to, and unforeseen things start to work in your favor, and all kinds of things opened up that weren't there before. It's as if a path is opened in the forest, and the tall grass is cut down, and you can see where to go next. So, and it takes courage to make a big commitment, larger than your own life. But the other thing that happens is the petty thoughts and doubts about who you are and whether you look good or whether you're smart enough or thin enough or cool enough or all that stuff, that all moves to the background and your commitment moves to the foreground. And it's not that you don't have those thoughts, but you don't have time to entertain them anymore. You don't have time to give them so much play because you're committed to ending world hunger, or you're committed to transforming your community, or you're committed to making sure that every person who comes in your field is experiencing love and giving and receiving love, or whatever your stand, your commitment is. And Archimedes said, give me a place to stand and I'll move the world. And you can, and you do. So I feel like it's a time when life is calling for us to make big, bold, courageous commitments. The world needs us to do that. And then we need that to have the kind of transformation we're looking for ourselves and to live a life of fulfillment and meaning. And when you make a big commitment, a commitment larger than your own life, it catapults you out of the petty thoughts you have about yourself into courageous, committed action, which is so exhilarating and so thrilling. You forget whether or not you're cool or smart or thin or all the stuff we worry about all the time. It's kind of like, forget that. We don't have time for that. We've got to make something awesome happen. So I recommend it.
Well, around here, Lynn, you know, our purpose at Xchange is through our work, how do we unlock potential at scale through how we gather, how we teach, convene, lead. And, you know, it's been a drum in our community that we beat, which is, you know, I've heard you say it's not about a big role or a small role. Whatever our role is, we can play into our biggest commitment in that lane. I want to be respectful, Lynn, of your time. You may have a hard stop in just a few minutes.
I can go a little bit over, but not too much.
All right. I was looking at our agenda, and I'm going to make our hard stop about 5 p.m. Eastern for you. So just having a little fun. I actually want to end, or at least this last question, I want to end where your first comments began. When I asked you, how does today find you, and how do you find us in this world? Your immediate first comment was around lessons that you've learned from Indigenous people. Mm-hmm. And I actually want to just end where this began and ask, in the work that you are doing today, you're working at the headwaters of the Amazon, which is like the source of life of the source of life.
Yep, right.
So you've got to be learning some interesting things. What have been the most meaningful gifts, lessons that you've learned from the significant time that you're spending? And Adair and I are talking about coming and joining you later this year. You've been introducing folks from around the world to these lessons. What are some of the most meaningful that you've learned from your time with these indigenous peoples?
Well, I want to make sure that I say that indigenous people all over the world have extraordinary downloads right now. I feel very fortunate to be connected to the indigenous people of the Amazon rainforest and the Andes. But they have shared with me, and I think this is pretty amazing, that there were 40 days during COVID. If you remember at the very beginning of COVID, when nobody was arguing with vaccine people and all that stuff wasn't happening, where we actually just went home and stayed inside. And the whole world did. I mean, it's just kind of staggering to remember that time. In the very beginning, we were told we had to stay inside, and we all, kind of like every country in the world and every place on earth, really did hunker down. And jaguars started walking down the streets in Chile and Santiago, and birds started proliferating, and skies cleared over China. And, there was a time of a 40-day period, actually, the indigenous people say, when we complied totally as a species we bowed to the virus, so to speak, the message, you could say, from the mother. They considered that a message from the mother. And at that same time, that 40-day period, indigenous people now are telling us that they all received, medicine people all over the world received huge downloads during those 40 days. And they didn't realize it until now that the COVID is over and they can be in communication with each other, that they received the same messages, whether it was in Mongolia or in China or in Native American people in British Columbia or in the Andes and the Amazon. Or the Kogi, which people are quite familiar with. And those messages are, the indigenous people didn't go through the Age of Reason and the Dark Ages and the Enlightenment and the Renaissance, which were all wonderful things that most of us on the planet went through, but drove us up into our heads, really, and almost abandoned the spiritual soil from which life really comes. So I'll just say that what indigenous people are saying now is that everything needs to be born in the deep soil of the spirit world to be viable going forward for our species. We need to really respect and honor what's coming through, that we are instruments of something. I'll say you and Adair clearly are instruments of something. I know you're listening not only to your own thoughts, which are pretty awesome, you two, but to something that wants to happen. And indigenous people are very much in touch with that. So that's one thing. Secondly, they don't individuate the way we do. They don't have, no indigenous languages that we know of have a word for I or me. It's a very interesting thing to notice in language. They don't have a word for I or me. They don't individuate the way we do. We are so individuated. We individuate often at the expense of the community. Their highest ethic is the good of the community, within which all individuals are cared for, rather than you individuate, even if you have to do it at the expense of the community. So that's a very powerful way to relook at who we are. And the collective, for example, that you're building here, is really important, way more important than it feels good. It's wonderful to connect with people that you love, to stay connected to community and to value community as the highest good, rather than individuate so much, is another teaching from them. And then I'll say, finally, that the earth is not something we need to, let's see, save. She'll be fine.
She bats last.
Yeah, she bets last. We need to listen deeply to the messages coming from her and obediently bow to that and find our way to live in sacred reciprocity with her and all that she has given us. Because we take way more than she can now renew and regenerate. So we have to be part of the regeneration. So when I use the word the Anthropocene, one more thing, we've been in what's called the Holocene, which is an ecological epoch for 12,000 years, where life flourished on the planet after the Pleistocene, which was the Ice Age. Where I work in the Amazon, where I hope to take all of you, is the Sacred Headwaters, which made it through the Ice Age and was like a Noah's Ark, where millions of species survived, traveled to the sacred headwaters of the Amazon and made it through the Ice Age and repopulated life at the beginning of the Holocene, which is 12,000 years ago. We have flourished, we, the human family, all forms of life during the Holocene, 12,000 years. Right around 1970, 1980, the Anthropocene began, which has become where humans have become so powerfully present on this planet and so powerful that we are now co-responsible for evolution. And that's a huge responsibility. And we have not come to terms with that. So to understand that we're instruments of the earth herself, the messages are coming through us, and to listen to them and to be obedient to them in sacred reciprocity with the long-term sustainability of life is the lessons we're learning from Indigenous people. And they've got their problems. They're not perfect. I don't want to over romanticize them. But they have a very important role right now in giving us guidance about how to go forward to sustain the long-term future of life itself.
Lynne, this has been wonderful. And I don't know that I can find the words to really express how I'm sensing you have touched 230 plus people. And we all know the power of a network and how many lives will be touched by this group. This has been really, really, really meaningful. We have a ritual, Lynne, when somebody visits as a guest like yourself to share their story, their teachings, where one of the ways that we like to close out is we invite our participants to contemplate, to reflect, what will they choose to take from this time with you as the greatest gift. And so I'm going to invite all of you right now. I'm not going to write it down.
Can I interrupt you and say one more thing?
Oh, of course. Yes.
I want to say one more thing.
Please.
There's another prophecy that I want to leave you to. This is a short one.
Please. Oh, please.
I think I did this with you. I can't remember if I told you in Adair this, but the Baha'i people say that humanity, this is a prophecy about our time, that humanity has a male wing and a female wing.
Mm-hmm.
And for hundreds of years, the bird of humanity has been flying primarily with the male wing, and the female wing has not been fully extended. Well, the male wing has been fully extended, fully expressed, and for hundreds of years has become overdeveloped, overmuscular, and now has become violent to keep the bird of humanity afloat. Therefore, the bird of humanity with only one functional wing has been flying in circles for hundreds and hundreds of years. But during the first century of the third millennium, which is where we are now, the first century of the third millennium, we're only 23 years in, the female wing in the bird of humanity will fully extend itself, fully express itself, and begin to be functional and fully express itself in men and women. And the male wing in all of us will therefore begin to relax a little bit And for the first time in hundreds of years, the bird of humanity will soar. I wanted to share that one. That's another good one. And that's where
Oh,
we are now.
well, I'm appreciative that you shared that.
Thanks for
Very
that
much.
extra.
Oh, very much appreciative. Lynn, if you'd like, you're welcome to stay to hear the reflections back.
Thank you.
And if you have to go, this has been extraordinary. And I'm going to invite all of you to take a moment just in solitude. And if you want to write down or just reflect in your minds on what the greatest gift has been, I'll encourage you all to take a moment just to reflect on that. As you think about the prophecies, the predictions, the invitation to connect to higher purpose, the willingness to break down, to break through, the balancing that's available, the role that we're here to play, what happens when we commit to something bigger. And we'll do this a little bit differently than we have this week. I'm going to ask Jana, as soon as I say go, to give you all the blue button. I am not going to give you any instructions. You'll be in a small group for just a few minutes. You're welcome to self-facilitate. You are perfectly capable of self-organizing around whatever the greatest gift is that you have been given by our time with Lynn. We'll just have you in these groups for maybe 3-4 minutes.
Hey, John, I need one minute, please.
Well, you all get 1 more minute to reflect on the greatest gift that you are going to take from our time with Lynn.
Thank you so much, everybody. I love it. Thank you so much.
Lynn will send you the chats a little bit later on. But I want to say thank you. And I'm going to ask you several questions. And the only answer that you can give is yes or no.
Okay.
So question number 1. Can we find a way to connect you again at some point in the future with this community?
Yes, of course. I would love it. Please.
Can we explore the possibility of a way for our members to maybe come down and visit the Pachamama Alliance in the Amazon? Is that a possibility?
Yes.
All right. I'm all out of yes or no questions. That was the extent of my ability to buy time. Jana, how are we doing there?
Sure. Yep. They're going to be.
Hey, everybody. You'll have just a few minutes to connect around your greatest gift with each other. And then maybe a few of you can share directly with Lynn the greatest gift you'll take from our time with her today. Here's the blue button. Have fun. We'll see you in just a few minutes. Cheers.
Lynn, if you get a button, you don't have to join. Sorry, I couldn't remove you fast enough.
Yeah, I'm gonna depart. But thank you so much, John, and everybody. And this was a joy. And thank you for giving me so much of your time.
Lynn, you're very welcome. And we'll send you a video of what they share and right after you depart here. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Thanks.
Bye, Lynn. See you
Let's see you
soon.
in your community. Awesome.
Bye. Much love, Lynn.
Take care. Hi, Danae. Hello, Diane. Hi, Ryan. Hi, Shelley. Hello, Edwards and Dr. Tamsin. Dr. Tamsin, you're like down the street from us. We should be sipping tea together.
I am. We should.
Let's go. Let's go.
Let's do it. Welcome back, everybody.
That was
All right.
way too short.
I know. People have told me that about my height for 40 plus years. All right, hold on.
This was so good. Oh my gosh.
Well, hey, so here's the deal, everybody. The deal is Lynn stayed 10 minutes late. There was a meeting she was supposed to be running that she made herself late to stay with us. She has taken off to go get to that important meeting. That was a gift that we got that time with her. However, she will see the video of your report outs right now. So you can share your greatest gift with the same spirit of sharing it directly with Lynn, because she will get to watch it. So look, we're going to get to maybe 2, 3, 4 of you. Just so you know, I will be moving around the order of the hands raised to try and give a chance for voices to come in that maybe haven't come in, or at least I don't remember them coming in. So I won't be perfect because I don't have that list in front of me. But Susan, we will start with you, and then we're going to go from there. So would love to hear, what is the greatest gift you're going to take from the time with Lynne?
Well, Lynn, if you're watching the recording, I have to say hi from my soul sister, Sage Levine. I know she says hi. So I was so moved at the end when Lynn mentioned the Baha'i prophecy on the 2 wings of a bird. And I've never heard it spoken like that. I was a Baha'i for 20 years. I joined the Baha'i faith when I was 23, and I unenrolled consciously 20 years to the day later over their stance on homosexuality, which I just couldn't abide with. But being a member of that faith gave me so much nourishment and support for 20 years. And in particular, they have a prophecy that they talk about of a long cycle that ended about 100 years ago. And that right now we're in a period of time of the breakdown of all of our societal systems and structures for the new, Baha'i world order to be born in its stead and to bring peace, the most great peace to the land. And it was so comforting to think of all of the societal breakdown having an ultimate purpose and a cause, a logical cause and results. And to hear about the Pachacuti cycles and that indigenous people have had those same prophecies, that was the first I've heard of that. And so it's like a rebirth in me of a logical order to the disorder that we're experiencing. And that it's, like just sort of if hearing her talk felt like a hug from a matriarch just saying, sweetheart, it's all going to be okay. It looks like it's all disintegrating, but it must. And as a recovering addict, I know that it's when you hit bottom that recovery starts. So it just helps me to not be so afraid for what society is going through right now. So it felt like a very big gift, what she shared.
Susan, thank you for sharing the gift that you took from our time with Lynne. Really, really meaningful. Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. Awesome. We're going to come to Monica Pendele. Monica, what is the greatest gift that you want to take from our time with Lynne? And then I'll probably get to 1 or 2 more after you, Monica, please.
When you feel like every cell in your body is vibrating, there's so much truth to it that your mind may not even allow it to surface. And this is one of those moments when it's not about saving anything. It's about staying anchored in the commitment of what you believe in, because then everything else becomes irrelevant. And it's in our leadership and in our sacred reciprocity that we will find the fuel to create it together. So it's a big honor and privilege to be here with you all, to really know that our role here is to lead with the heart. And it's going to be hard, and it's okay because it's meant to be. And knowing that, I don't need anything else. So thank you all, because we are abundant. Nobody's poor.
Monica, thank you for sharing the gifts that you're taking from our time with Lynne. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to come to Kathleen. And Kathleen, you may be the last one for now. Please go right ahead.
Am I the right Kathleen?
You are, yes.
Okay. So I think so much, and I can't say how much I leaned into the screen and just didn't even blink, was so pulled in. But I would think it's the courage to step forward into your role in what's being called and know that the capabilities will be there for you.
The courage to step forward and knowing that the capabilities will be there. Kathleen, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see there are other hands up, and I'm going to ask for your all's forgiveness and understanding and appreciation that we're going to transition on now. What a pleasure. What a pleasure. And I do want all of you to know that Adair and I, we got the chance to get to know Lynne quite well in 2023. I've been a student of hers for a long time, and we got to work with her in hosting the Conscious Capitalism CEO Summit, and getting to work with her and to choreograph how we were going to facilitate with her around her stories. It was an experience that I know we will never forget. And during that experience of getting to know Lynne more deeply, she continuously expressed her interest and her desire to be a part of, not just a contributor, but to be around whatever we are doing at Exchange. So don't be surprised if you see Lynne again online or elsewhere. Really, really, really a privilege that we get to have teachers like Lynne and like all the teachers we've had this week.